Welcome to the Tallahassee Town Hall, part of the Village Square's Our Town series. I'm Skip Foster, publisher of the Tallahassee Democrat, and I'll be moderating tonight's event with Leon County and Tallahassee City Commissioners. A special thanks to AARP of Florida and Bible-Based Church, who are sponsors of tonight's event, which will be broadcast more often than Law and Order, I just found out. So that was supposed to make you laugh. So I'm going to get started here with questions for our commissioners, and right here is Mary Ann Lindley to my left. And Commissioner Lindley, I want to ask you about school violence. It's been obviously in the news in the last week, and we saw an incredible 24 hours here in Tallahassee. I know we've got some young people here from TCC. We should probably replace me and y'all with them and let them solve some problems like they worked on yesterday. But I wanted to ask you at the local level, so we're certainly not interested in getting into a Second Amendment discussion here. If you do, I'll get run out of the hall. But what at the local level, if anything, can be done to address this issue?
Thank you for that question. Actually, there is one thing that counties are able to do. Are we good? Almost all legislation regarding guns has been preempted by the state legislature, so counties have very little authority to do anything. We can do one thing, which is require background registration at gun shows. That is a very narrow little window where a community can act in what it believes it's the best interest for its community. We attempted this 4 years ago and kind of came away thinking maybe the time wasn't right on that. There are 3 counties in Florida that have done it, so that means 64 have not, if my math is correct. So I think that's something that local governments can discuss with their communities, and I think it would be worth having that discussion once again.
I see heads nodding. Is there anyone who would not be in favor of doing that? Everybody on board with that?
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody else have action that they could, again, it has to be something you could take at the local level, or at least in this case, yeah, at the local level. So is there anything else that anybody would want to weigh in on there? So just so you know how this works, this isn't everybody's going to answer every question. We want to try to move around a little bit, and if we can reach consensus, that's a good thing.
I just want to reinforce something that Commissioner Lindley said, and that is, sorry. I want to reinforce something that Commissioner Lindley said, and that is, we're preempted. The state, I mean, for us, we can go to jail, we can have a fine, personally fined, if we do anything that in any way restricts people's ability to own guns or to use their guns. For example, at the city, we actually ended up going to court because we wanted to keep on the books, a law that prevented people from firing guns in our parks. We went to court over that. So
and prevailed.
If you've got an issue and you'd like us to do more, because we haven't had the conversation, but I would venture to guess if we could do more, we would. Talk to your state rep, talk to your state senator, reach out to other people. This preemption keeps us from helping you in any way at all.
Commissioner Desloge and then Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting at the local level, as pointed out, we have little or no authority with gun control, but my understanding is the sheriff, the chief of police, and the school superintendent met in the last day or two to talk specifically about what can we do here locally to make the schools a little bit more safe. It's also worth noting that in the jail we run here in Leon County, about a third of the people we have in our jails have mental illness, and it's a big issue and it's not being addressed. So that's something locally we can probably lean in on and try and help.
Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, and Commissioner Desloge stole my thunder. My background is psychology, and so that is one of the issues. There is no silver bullet in all of this. We've got to look at all of because from what I understand, there were some issues with law, particularly the kid in Broward County. There had been 39 instances where some agency or another was called to visit his home, and even the sheriff in the town hall meeting said that he's looking at what they might have done wrong in his department. So those are issues that need to be addressed. Certainly providing mental health services, we can do that. We can fund those programs in the community to provide mental health services to those individuals that might need it, and give our law enforcement agencies the resources and tools that they need in order to be able to deal with those individuals that might have mental health problems in the community.
Okay, any new ground anybody want to cover there?
I had some new ground that I actually read in a flash from the Tallahassee Democrat this afternoon about the inability of state attorneys to prosecute people who make generalized threats, such as the teenagers that were arrested, but there doesn't seem to be any real statutes that give them any authority, particularly to move forward on that.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes, thanks, Skip. And thank you all for coming tonight, for taking the time out of your lives to come. I hope this won't be the end of the conversation and the generation of ideas, because the groundswell that was created by these students who were the victims and the people who were being shot at, so they have a perspective that, that's very unique. They've started a conversation, and that we can encourage to continue. I mean, not just that we should, as government officials, pass this regulation or that, but that we encourage people to continue to be resourceful and try to look at this from every conceivable angle, because every one of you has a different perspective on anything we might bring up here today. Something may seem similar, but generally there's a slightly different idea, and it's from the larger conversations that ideas are going to come. But this has to change. Can't continue. Because of the crime stats, there is a new operation in town. Essentially, all of the law enforcement agencies, and you may not realize it, but there are quite a number of them, 7 at least, operating in Leon County, have formed what they call the collective. They come together on a monthly basis to address various problems, and I'm sure this will be an ongoing conversation with them. So the answer is basically we can encourage folks to continue to really seriously think about this after all the hubbub and everybody leaves town. Continue to talk about it. That's one thing I think is
Commissioner
important.
Dailey.
Skip, first of all, thank you for being our moderator today, and thanks for WFSU.
Well, we'll see if you think so when we're done.
Right. I agree with everything that's been said, and it's so good to see us all on the same page on this issue. And in particular, I want to thank Mary Ann Lindley for bringing up the gun show loophole several years ago and having the courage to do so. And I very much look forward to that conversation again in the near future. One additional comment, though, is that we tend to forget that the sheriff's office, one of their responsibilities is the school resource officer program. And I think as county commissioners, we will be looking for those recommendations based off of the meeting from the sheriff, the police chief, and the superintendent on how we can support even more so the school resource officer program and what needs to be done to keep our kids safe.
Okay, great. Okay, so, any good golf course designer has a first hole that's pretty easy and everybody can play, and now we move on maybe to a little tougher holes. Commissioner Ziffer, addressing a group of Democrats, you recently said the following: "We have a lot to do, but the FBI hangs over everything we do. The commission is pretty dysfunctional right now." You went on to say, "I've heard no complaints about service, but I do hear complaints about us, the electeds, the appointed at the upper level of management." The question is, how did that happen? How did we get in that
I was at an
position?
event and I was asked and I gave the answer.
How did we get to that level of
Oh,
dysfunction?
you want a more broader, global, macro answer. Well, one of the reasons is our newspaper runs a considerable amount of stories, and every time the story runs, no matter what it has to do with, that second or third graph reminds everybody that it says the city is under FBI investigation. As best I can tell, the city's not under FBI investigation. The CRA had emails subpoenaed, and I believe there are some people that are under FBI investigation. So I'm going to separate the city from certain people. I don't know how it cannot weigh on us. It's everywhere. It's where I go. People want to talk about it. They ask me questions. I think that now that maybe that I've said that, and we've not had meetings since then. That's kind of out there, and that'll help us get through it. But I'm not going to run from the fact that we have a couple things going on in our commission right now that are distractions. That is one. No fault, but our mayor is also running for governor, and that's taking a lot of time, and I think he's focusing on that. We need we have important decisions ahead of us. We have one coming up this week to talk about potentially moving our police stations. Big discussion, a huge discussion, and so we just need to get ahead of that.
So there's a difference between distraction and the word you used, which was dysfunction.
Well, yeah.
Can you expand on the dysfunction part?
I want to hear it.
Commissioner Richardson wants to hear it. We had a recent conversation regarding the decision on hiring a city attorney. And that conversation broke down, I felt, to a place that I would rather it not gone. I wanted us to focus on things that I've been hearing, which is people want us to go outside. People want us to reach out further than just internally. And I think that is important. We're doing it with our city manager position. We're doing it with the city auditor position. We need to do a better job with our city attorney. And that's not to say we may not come back and in the end hire the assistant or the acting city attorney right now. But that argument and that discussion got a little sidetracked, I felt. And I think we need to get back on track. It was a little dysfunctional. It was. And so we need to do a better job.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson, you in that same story pushed back on what your colleague said. Do you disagree that there is dysfunction?
I absolutely disagree that
Okay.
there's dysfunction. And I'm not sure that Commissioner Ziffer used the right word. There is no dysfunction that I have observed. We work very collegially as a commission. If you look at our meetings, our agenda, most of the items that we deal with, it's a 5-0 vote. Certainly we had some differences, and those were expressed in an open meeting about who we thought was best to assume the city attorney's position, but we were collegial even in that. We respected each other's position. I don't know where it went that it would have caused us to be dysfunctional. I kept it to simply what I thought were the qualifications of the person who I was recommending for the position. I think she is eminently qualified for that post. I don't know that we'll find anybody in this nation any more qualified than her, but I certainly respected the position of my colleagues. We took a vote. I respected that, and we moved forward. I think we've done an excellent job of providing leadership for this city under the circumstances. I don't feel that the FBI investigation weighs on me at all. I was elected to provide leadership for this city. That's what I'm doing. All of this started before I came to the commission, but certainly it can be a distraction. But we've got work to do as a city to move this community forward, and that's what I stay focused on. I can't focus my time and attention on what the FBI is doing. They've got to do their job, and at the appropriate time, if someone did something inappropriate, they will handle that, and the courts will handle that.
So, Commissioner Miller, you, when in your op-ed that ran in our paper announcing that you were not going to run again, talked about the level of discourse. You said that it's at an all-time low, and that was part of your, at least a factor in your decision-making. So, it sounds like you might fall in the middle here, or how do you assess this dysfunction and what the board is actually able to get done right now?
Well, the larger community conversation that I referenced in the letter really plays on all of us also. And I mean, we sit there meeting after meeting hearing people accuse us of all sorts of things with no basis for that. And, you know, that's tough to hear. And when it reflects on your family and your family members start being targeted, then, you know, you have to give that a considerable amount of thought. As far as I understand how Commissioner Ziffer feels, but I don't believe that the commission is dysfunctional in any way. We have so many different items that come up before us on a weekly basis, and transportation and planning and projects that are being built all over town and on and on. And I don't feel that FBI hanging over me at any point, and I don't think that is part of, that it affects my decision-making or my attention or when I get up in the morning and decide what I'm going to do for the day. And I would like to remind everybody that the FBI was investigating Mayor Marks, and then they were investigating the school board, or not the members, but Jackie Pons. And so it's not exactly a new presence. It's certainly a larger presence than it was before. But that's just one aspect of what we do, and we have so much more work that doesn't intersect with that. I think we get along amazingly well. There are 5 different individuals, just like we have 7 over here, and everybody has their own set of whatever that they bring to the table, background and experience and everything else. And so obviously you're going to look at things, just as I said a minute ago, everybody's perspective is somewhat different, which I think is strengthening. But sometimes you get crossways over one element or another, and if that never happened, then it would be a miracle. But I do think the pressure that's the larger pressure of the dynamic that's going on in the community has more of an effect on all of us than the FBI investigation itself.
Okay. So before my time, what I'm told is that it used to be that the city was riding high and it was the county that was kind of having some problems. So when you county folks look across, at what they are going through, what is your assessment? What advice do you have? What do you we've heard dysfunction. We've heard from Commissioner Richardson that we've got some distractions, but things are going pretty well. We've heard from Commissioner Miller that it's kind of the pressure and the level of discourse. With whom would you align?
Have you heard the expression there, but for the grace of God?
Yes.
The pendulum swings.
I think we're all elected, and though we represent 2 different, as county commissioners, we represent the whole county in Leon County, but I think when we look at what the city commissioners have to do, I don't know that we can give them advice. I mean, we're all elected, we all have disagreements, and we all have different things that we agree on as well. I know one thing at the county that I've always said that we do well, and I'll talk about that rather than giving advice, is I think we operate as a team. We do disagree, but we agree to disagree at points, and then when we agree. But I think it works for us. Even Commissioner Proctor, all of us. We allow each other to get our points across.
You just said that on TV.
I did because Bill's a very, very opinionated person, but it doesn't cause us to go to a place where we can't agree to disagree or agree on certain issues and get past them. Yep. We've had some long, heated conversations at some commission meetings, and some are relatively a little easier. But it doesn't stop us from getting the business done. And so I would compliment this board, and I always say this even at our meetings, on the way we approach each and every subject as a team, and know we have to work together to get to the issues.
Commissioner Dailey, then Commissioner Dozier.
I don't have any advice. I just want to say that I have the utmost respect for my 3 city commissioners that are sitting here. I love working with each and every one of them, and I have grown very fond of their decision-making process, and Nick is absolutely correct. You do not want governing bodies that have a 7-0 vote every single time. That's not how democracy works. But I think there's a very important point that needs to be made here, and I was talking to someone earlier about this. The relationship between the city and the county has not been this strong in decades. In the working relationship between the professional administrations of both, I have the highest regard for the acting city manager, the acting city attorney, the auditor, and the clerk. We have excellent administrative leadership on our side, and it's seamless. They are working extremely well. And I think the citizens of this community need to know that your city is strong, your county is strong, and we are strong moving forward together.
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you. I think the first thing that I want to say is we there are a tremendous number of people working within the city of Tallahassee and Leon County public service employees who are doing their job every day. They are hit by this, and Commissioner Dailey, when he was chair, you said this last year in front of a group of employees. They feel this as a personal attack when people look at the city and county governments. And I think, Commissioner Ziffer, you were right to distinguish between the administrative staff or the political leaders and those public employees. And that, in that respect, I think there's a lot of ways that city and county are both functioning really well. But I'm going to take a little issue. How could this not be a distraction? People go outside of our community and they hear about it from others. I mean, this is perhaps in part thanks to USA Today and Tallahassee Democrat or other, I mean, this is known. Anytime there is an investigation, it is a distraction. It's a draw on public resources. With the CRA having to divert resources to gather all the emails and respond to it, how could that not slow us down a little bit? So it's not a product of their own making necessarily. I don't believe that, but it slows down the efficiency of the process. We have a tremendous amount to do. The CRA, just and that particularly, we have initiated projects that have taken 2-3 years to get through because we have a limited staff and a tremendous amount to do. So I do think that I would say this, I don't know if I'd use any of the words that have been put out there, but it is a drag on our effectiveness right now. And while I do think there's a lot of ways that city and county work really well together, I think there are so many more issues that we could tackle and ways to be more efficient, ways to look at functional consolidation of different departments, things like that, that we can't get to those conversations because and I think this comes up too, that we are, of course, going to have policy differences. We're going to have good debates, but we can't get past some of these other issues. One last thing, you mentioned how the city and county may have reversed roles. When I was watching county commission meetings thinking about running for office, they were going till 10, 11, 12 at night.
Hey now, hey.
Not you guys, not you. You guys had only been there a couple of years, and I won't put that on the, but strategic planning and if reorganization at the county, we have gotten so much more responsive to the community. And I think looking at the org structure has been a tremendous benefit. And I think we need to do that, whether it's business or local government, all the time, every few years, look at that. And I really think that we have done a good job, the county administrator and the staff have done a good job doing a deep dive on how we could be more efficient and responsive.
Okay, so let's, I got one more question and then we're gonna get out because Commissioner Dozier used the word consolidation and it's on my list. Yeah,
But
I don't
yes.
know. You can use whatever adjective you want. So, presumably, Tallahassee has been targeted by the Justice Department for a reason. And we know, with all respect, I don't remember who was saying it, but the number of agents that were involved here was far greater than any other investigation that's gone on in town. And it's not just the city, it's the CRA as a city county, and we know that the undercover agents met with county officials as well. What is it about the culture of Tallahassee, Leon County that made us vulnerable to this type of investigation? And are there times that you have felt uncomfortable with the way business was being done in Tallahassee and Leon County? Commissioner Richardson.
I would disagree with you that this is the culture of the city of Tallahassee. I've lived in this community for over 40 years. And I've never seen that be the maybe you used the wrong word.
No, what I meant was,
but it's not the culture of the city of Tallahassee
didn't ask it
or
well
Leon
then.
County.
What is it about the culture that led to the Justice Department believing and devoting all of these resources to investigating whether corruption is in fact happening? And of course, in the search warrant that came out last week, they are now asserting that a crime has been committed. They have yet to indict anyone, but in that search warrant, they are asserting 3 federal offenses. So what I'm asking is, what is it about the way business was done, not just government business, private sector business, that made this a place that interested them?
Well, obviously, there were those individuals, Skip, that were subpoenaed, and I don't know much about what the FBI is doing. They don't brief us every day on what it is they're doing, and
If only.
but what I can tell you is that the city of Tallahassee is 2,800 employees that are our neighbors. They're Little League coaches. They volunteer in our community. They raise thousands of dollars annually for nonprofit organizations in the community. And to suggest that there's anything corrupt about the culture of the city of Tallahassee is erroneous.
Okay.
There are individuals, and most of those have been business people. They are members of business organizations, but no one has insinuated that those business organizations that those business people are a member of are corrupt, or that there's something wrong with those business organizations. There are always going to be individuals that will commit crimes, and like I said, they're being investigated, and when and if someone is determined to have done something inappropriate, I'm sure that they will be dealt with appropriately, but it suggests nothing about the culture of the city of Tallahassee and its employees, or even its government officials, maybe with one exception, at all.
Okay. Am I?
Yeah,
Desloge?
I mean, if you're a fan of public policy, you know, we're in the backyard of, this is the World Series. We had an $80 billion government in our backyard, but the reality is we're held to a higher standard. You know, I came from the business environment, and the way I operate in the business environment doesn't wash on this side of the house. And so there's a learning curve, and unfortunately, right or wrong, some people may have colored a little bit outside the lines. And it's, there's a lot of money that gets moved around, and there are a lot of things that get done, and, you know, people make mistakes. And unfortunately, it's a lot of gray area out there. And when you start talking about tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, people take liberty with that sometimes. So, and I'm not casting stones here. I'm just saying it happens. And we are, I mean, Florida, $80+ billion. This is it. I mean, we're in the backyard of this stuff. So.
Ziffer, then Dozier.
I've been on the commission for 8.5 years, and I've never had anybody come to me and suggest a bribe. I've never had anybody come to me and offer me something that was inappropriate. I've never had anybody in any way reach out in a way that is against the law. So if there is a culture of corruption, I sure as heck haven't seen it. And having been engaged in just about every committee there is, whether it's the CRA or Blueprint or my city government or all the different committees that I serve in our city as a result of it, I haven't had that. So I'm not sure where it is or who's been approached, but I would venture to guess if you were to go down the line here,
None of us.
you're going to get a lot of no's.
Okay. Dozier, and then Miller.
So I'm thinking of one example here. I think we are held to a higher standard. We have to be. And we have a phenomenally engaged community. It's great. Whether it's a developer, someone who wants to save trees, someone who wants to promote the arts, people are contacting us all the time. And I think Commissioner Ziffer's right. By and large, I would bet most people who have served in office in this community have never been in the position where they have been asked to do something illegal or been offered something. I certainly haven't, and I'm guessing everyone up here probably hasn't. Having said that, I think, and I wouldn't use the word culture, but it's not so sexy, the process matters. RFP processes are boring, drawn out, just really hard for businesses to respond to. But they level the playing field for people. I think when we have processes in place that have a more subjective type of decision making, it allows for someone, if they are a bad actor, and I'm not passing judgment on anyone, but to take advantage of those process. So corruption could happen in any level of government, but the process matters, and everyone else watching this, watching us, asking questions matters.
Commissioner Miller.
Well, Skip, in answer to your question, I've got no idea, because I'm with Commissioner Ziffer, and I'm sure Commissioner Richardson, and probably everybody up here. Nobody's ever approached me. I've never met Mr. Mike Miller, other than that my former husband was named Mike Miller, I must admit.
Wait a minute. What did he? Can I have a picture of him?
But I think that it's important to remember that there were a lot of subpoenas that went out, and only certain ones of those, like 3, I think, had anything to do with local government. And I think that looking at the list of folks who receive subpoenas, you know, they have their business people, and they've got business at every level, state level, federal level. And I don't think it helps to have a marijuana license either, given the fact that there were only 5 in the state. That's very competitive. You asked me what I thought might. I have no evidence that any of this is purely supposition on my part, but I think that you know, there were a lot of elements that might have attracted federal attention to our city. And I think we've pretty much settled on, we've kind of started swirling that the city is the only part that's actually, that they were drawn to the city. And I think that that's a little bit out of balance, that interpretation.
Okay, Commissioner Dailey, and then we'll exit.
Let me wrap up on a
Exit
positive.
stage
Let me wrap
consolidation.
up on a positive note on this one, because, you know, we live in a community of 285,000 people, and the conversation is swirling around the actions of just a couple that are under investigation, and we all recognize that. But what I love about this community is that we are active in our local government, and you help us become who we are, and you do hold us to a separate standard. Let me tell you something. We got Gil Ziffer, who is the current president of the Florida League of Cities. You got Nick Maddox, who's the first vice president of the Florida Association of Counties. You have Bryan Desloge, who's the former president of the Florida Association of Counties and the former president of the National Association of Counties. We've got strong leadership that comes out of this community, and I'm very proud to serve with these people. We are dedicated to this community, and we try to do the best we can. We don't always get it right on the policy side, but I think that we admit when we don't get it right and move forward. But I don't think any of us up here, and I can say this unequivocally, you would ever have to question our political dealings on behalf of this community.
Okay, so let's talk about consolidation. This is something that the local Chamber of Commerce, which, by the way, is indirectly sponsoring this event through Leadership Tallahassee, has been pushing as an issue. And I want everybody, this is one where I want everybody to kind of weigh in. Where do you stand with on this? What is your openness to it, or is there no openness or complete openness on the issue of city-county consolidation? Commissioner, we're just going to go down the line here.
Okay. Well, I think there are 2.
Alphabetically?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I mean, I think there are 2 separate communities here. I'm one of the 2 at-large commissioners in the county, and I know that people who live in the unincorporated area are quite different from people who live within the city limits, and they want different things, and they don't want certain things also. We came across this when we tried to have universal recycling and so forth out in the county, and we found out a lot of people who live in the far reaches of the county, they didn't want anything to do with all of that. They wanted to keep the county dumps open. You know, that was just a different thing. It's a different level of service, and they didn't want the same things that people who live in the urban areas want. So there are 2 different populations, and I really don't think people who live outside of the city limits, for the most part, would say, yeah, we want to all do kumbaya and be a part of the city at one, you know, in one place. And one other, or 2 other small points. The 2 issues that seem to keep coming up if you're discussing consolidation are crime and public corruption. And I just simply don't see how merging offices and playing musical chairs with the different agencies is going to address crime, which can be dealt with separately, together, through the sheriff or the police department or the many law agencies that Commissioner Miller mentioned. And as for corruption, there is something called larceny in the human heart, and it will always be there. And if there are people who are vulnerable to that, then that is not going to be solved by rearranging the offices.
Commissioner Desloge.
Yeah, I would say I'm wide open to the discussion, but let me reframe the question a little bit. I've been in office 12 years now, and just about every forum of any significance, this comes up in the top. You know, let's talk about where you stand, what's going on with consolidation. What I have yet to see is us as a collective body, city and county, sit down and have a real discussion about the facts over a period of time to talk about it, because there's a lot of moving parts. How do you govern? What happens with law enforcement? You know, you talked about waste. I mean, there's 100 things, and we're not going to solve it on one anecdotal little piece. And so I would love, in fact, I'll throw the challenge out, I would love for us to take a half a day or a day in a facilitated discussion and get into it. And we might get to the end of the day and say, it doesn't make sense. And then we're dealing with facts. We're not dealing with just a lot of anecdotal things, as opposed to everybody goes to their camps. I like elected, I like appointed, I like their, you know. So I think it's time, and frankly, just having the discussion is a healthy thing. You know, staff could clearly put together, you know, what would happen? How would you govern? What's the law enforcement angle? How would this work out? There's 100 different decisions, and I think it would be time well spent as a community. I think it'd be time well spent as a body, city, and county, and I think, you know, to the degree that we can do that, I think it would make a lot of sense.
Second.
Anybody not willing to do that? I see lots of nodding heads.
You know,
Nick, Maddox, reluctantly.
it's not really, I'm open to the discussion.
Yeah.
If we're talking about discussing, yes, I'm open to discussion.
Okay.
I think and if this can serve as my time
Sure.
to speak on
We'll
it, I think
get
that
everybody.
the chamber there's three parts to it, of course. There's the law enforcement side of it, there's also the tax revenue side of it, and then you have to look at how it affects our economic vitality as a city, county. I think the chamber did their study that told us a little bit about the economic vitality side of it. I think there's still a few questions as far as this economic vitality side of it, but I think in large they gave us a picture of what it could look like. But the law enforcement and tax and revenue is something that I think we have to discuss. And I think maybe in a forum like that, maybe those discussions do happen and maybe something does come out of it. I think it's more complicated, though, than us just sitting down as electeds with staff coming back and us talking about it. You know, I mean, it's a very complicated issue. If you even talk about just the point of how you got to go about getting it done, it takes an act from the legislature. It takes a vote from our constituents. I mean, there's a lot of different steps we have to take here to get there. I'm open to the discussion, but I'm not ready yet to commit to say, hey, I think it's the best thing since sliced bread for us to do, because it's just there's not enough information for me anyway to say that that's the answer.
Okay, Commissioner Dozier, catch up here.
Thank you. I am always open for discussion, maybe a little more than some people would like sometimes. But hey, you know, I own it. But are we at the point of saying, should we consolidate or not? I don't think so. I think there are a tremendous number of ways that we can do better as a city and a county, as a community. We are growing as a region. We've got big changes. Urban infill. We've got discussions every few months and attention, but also good progress. We're changing our economic development ways all the time, and this is a great thing. We cannot do things the way we've done them in the past. But I think we've got to start with what are our issues, what are our goals, who do we want to be, and then figure out how best to get there. That might be functional consolidation, it might be greater efficiency, and it might be consolidation. But asking the academic question, what does consolidation look like for us, to me does not tell me why we should do it. What does it solve? Or really even how we should do it. Because the product at the end, as Commissioner Lindley said, I mean, you can go bad in one government or two or 10 or whatever. We need to figure out what's best for us. A crisis, going off the Democrats' headline in November, can be an opportunity. It is a catalyst. We took this on at Innovation Park after an incredible embezzlement years ago. And we didn't just say, okay, we need to tighten all the controls so this one thing never happens again. We said, who do we want to be in the future? How do we get better? And how do we be part of the economic future? It was both questions at the same time, and we've turned it around. That's what I think I would be interested in having, but I'm not hearing those details yet.
Okay.
So let's have a more robust conversation, and this is the right time to do it.
All right, Commissioner Dailey.
Yeah, I'm
We're
definitely.
working our way.
Sure.
We're going to get to everybody on this one.
I'm trying to curtail my comments, so I'm not duplicating what everybody says. Of course, I'd be more than happy to sit down in a half-day workshop, Bryan. That's a great idea, great proposal. In fact, we've got a track record of successful functional consolidation. You look at the planning department. Yeah, OEV. Those are two prime examples in this community of consolidated departments that work very well. I also want to remind you that the county has never shied away from this. When I was chairman in 2010, by a 7-0 unanimous vote, we sent a formal communication to the mayor at that time and said we would love to propose a half-day workshop to talk about consolidation and functional consolidation. Unfortunately, at the time, I don't even know if the mayor even shared that with the commission, and if you even knew that a 7-0 formal vote and communication took place, because he was not in favor of moving forward with it. Okay. My point is that we have been standing in favor of these type of discussions since 2010.
Okay. We already heard from Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Miller.
Well, I'm all in on the conversation, mainly because we really do need to have the conversation. I think Commissioner Richardson's going to talk a little bit about the department's massive effort that has been made to consolidate things already. And, but is a lot of, our government is very, very complicated. They're the utilities, right. And there are a number of them, including the airport and Star Metro and on and on. And we usually end up talking, you know, the biggest item people think about is the police force and the sheriff. But the fact is that our governments have completely different pension programs. If the city goes away, the 4.1 mils, and that's about $50 million that is invested in services to the city, will go away. So how do you deal with that? And I would love to have a practice session by inviting my county commissioners to sit in for us next time when we have our negotiations with our unions, because we have 2 unions and they don't have that. And that's the kind of thing that I agree with Commissioner Dozier, that there is just so much more to talk about. And I would be more than happy. No, I did not know about your vote or your invitation, and I'm glad that you shared that with us tonight, because I do believe that the thing is that there's nothing to be afraid of. All of us want to do what's best for the community, and we need to figure out how our community is going to be the strongest in the future. As we go into the future, is it this route or is it that route? Will this help? Will it not? And I think that we need to talk about all the elements and realize how many there are.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson, yeah.
Thank you, Skip. There are a lot of young people in this audience. Like I said, I've lived here for 40 years, and this item has been on the ballot a number of times in Leon County. And each time it's been on the ballot, it was overwhelmingly defeated because the people of Tallahassee and Leon County said they did not want consolidation. I don't hear discussion of consolidation in the community, anywhere I go. I appreciate the fact that the chamber, has shown some interest in it and had their study done, but that study was very limited. It only focused on economic development. And if you look at where we are as a city and county, what we're doing is working. We've got the fastest growing economy in the state of Florida right now. We were just at an economic forecast breakfast this morning, sponsored by the chamber. The news is very great for Tallahassee and Leon County and our region. So the structure that we have is working. I would tell you that we have, since the consolidation issue failed, there has been a number of departments where functional consolidation has taken place. Our planning departments, growth management, the Office of Economic Vitality are all combined, and they work together. And I can tell you with respect to crime, I grew up in the Jacksonville area. Jacksonville is just, I don't know if they celebrated, but they have reached the 50th year of consolidation in that community. And it's been a mixed bag. Actually, in their report, it said that consolidation actually slowed economic growth in Jacksonville, Duval County. Across the state, or across the nation, 60% of consolidation issues on the ballot have failed. There's only 2 consolidated governments in Florida, Jacksonville, Duval County, Miami-Dade. I can tell you it has not been the best thing for Jacksonville, and particularly the minority community in Jacksonville, Duval County. When you look at the fact that they've got 19 council members and only 3 are African American. The African American communities in Jacksonville have suffered as a result. Nashville, a consolidated government, 41 council members. How do you get anything done under that?
Somebody came ready to answer a consolidation question.
I did. The Charter Review Commission refused to take it up as an issue. It didn't even make it past the first. So there are lots of issues when it comes to consolidation. It is not a silver bullet. And like I said, I feel like what we've got, as Commissioner Dailey said earlier, we're working better together as governments than I've seen in the 4 decades that I've lived in this community, and why change at this point?
Okay, Commissioner Ziffer,
Yes.
head of the League of Cities,
Okay.
how do you feel about consolidation?
Well, yeah, there are a couple things. The first thing is, and if you follow our commission meetings, and it's just my way. I've been in advertising for 40 years. If I can't say it in 30 seconds or less, I generally don't do it, because if you can't sell it in 30 seconds, you usually can't. My first point is, I'm not sure the county wants to give all their things up for us to run. That's the first thing. But I'm all open for having the discussion, because I think it's important to have that discussion out in the public, and I think it's important for us to have it, and it not occur outside and us being, the recipient of an article in the newspaper about why we should do it. We should be having that discussion.
That's all I'm asking.
Oh, you're done. Okay.
30 seconds.
Great. Okay. I wasn't ready. Good modeling there. All right. So we're running short on time. This is the I ask the questions part, and then we'll have a part coming up later for these much smarter than me people to ask questions. So just so everybody knows, you're going to get your shot. Don't worry. Let's talk about crime. It looks like, based on an agenda item that has just been out, that there is going to be a reduction in crime in some of the latest stats that came out, 13%. Does this sound familiar? So I don't think we've written on this yet, but so my question is, what do you think it is we're doing that is working, and what is it specifically? So I'm really not interested in, broad themes. What specific things should we be doing to keep the momentum going? Did I see your hand,
Sure.
Ziffer? Okay, Ziffer, then Dozier, then Miller.
And I don't have the exact numbers on me, but we have a lot, the city, have a lot more police on the street. We have a lot more police that are in the communities. We have a lot more people that are out there, and we have more in the pipeline coming. And the other thing is that we've done, and I haven't seen the final statistics on this, or the initial statistics, is we started to use cameras. We've had, over the past couple of years, incidences where we've had people killed with dozens, if not more than dozens, of witnesses, and people are reluctant to come forward because of retribution. And so if people aren't willing to speak up and see what they saw, cameras do that. And we have put cameras in various places within our city, and we seem to have had a reduction in those areas. So the next question is, well, does that crime just move somewhere else? It might, and when we find where it is, we'll move the cameras there.
Okay, we're down to just a couple minutes, so 30 seconds if you can.
Quickly.
I want to get to one more topic.
Yeah, 3 top things. I think there's increased resources on both city and county side. We do fund the sheriff's department and out of our general revenue directed by the sheriff, but in collaboration. There's a lot more collaboration between all of our agencies. I think that was mentioned before. We had a workshop that included the chief of police and the sheriff and many others. But the community engagement, there is a lot more understanding of this, and a lot more people, even CRA dedicating money to take down buildings that have been abandoned and might have been a focal point for some crime. This is working on all fronts. It's not just a law enforcement issue. We're making incremental progress, but it's getting better.
Okay, Miller, then Maddox.
Yes.
The collective that I mentioned before, the collaboration of the law enforcement agencies, the new focus on community policing, where the officers really bond, attempt to really get to know the people in the communities that they're policing. And also, I think our discussions about moving the police force, we're talking about doing what can be referred to as a community police environment, where there are a lot of other social services attached, and so that we're looking at more of a campus. I think that's going to be a big change over the that building that's over on, I think, 6th or 7th Avenue. So those are three things that I think are either having an effect already or going to continue to have an effect in the future.
Okay?
Quickly, I
Maddox,
know,
yeah.
I don't think we can end this conversation without giving the sheriff and the police chief a little credit. We challenged them to get it done, and they got it done. I think the sheriff's all-in initiative, the collective that you were talking about, those things all added up to if we got lower numbers for us to have lower numbers. But then again, I also don't think we can end this conversation without giving you, the citizens, some credit there too. You had to take some of that responsibility on too, to police yourselves and police each other. We can't do it by ourselves. Law enforcement can't do it by themselves. I think it was a community effort, and we all jumped in together to get it done. And so I think everybody, not just, one branch or the other, got it done.
Real quick?
Yeah, real quick. I've been working with Sheriff McNeil and others on trying to address the people who are in jail now for substance abuse and mental health issues, and we are trying to find some ways to address those problems that people have that get them into jail and keep the revolving door going. So I think we're kind of in a bit of early days, but I think there's going to be some help in that when people are in jail, commit crimes because of substance abuse or mental health issues, and try to address those problems and keep them from coming right back.
Okay. Real quick, we're just down to a minute or two. The city of Tallahassee recently released 2 maps showing the change in the city's tree canopy over the last 60 years. Did y'all happen to see this? It was in the mid-50s and then today, and the tree canopy was about 50% larger today than it was 60 years ago. If you saw that, what is your reaction to it, particularly in the light of the story we had a few days ago about some concerns about the new Cascades Park development and the impact it would have on trees?
Say, go local government.
Well, first of all, the city is considerably bigger than it was in the 50s. And it's much more urbanized. It's changed in virtually every way. It's changed even in the last 8 years when I've been in office. So I think that is, we've had an emphasis on infill ever since the comprehensive plan was originated in the early 90s, and trying to maximize the use of infrastructure by getting as many people to live in, close to one another, and then you get the inevitable result. But our most recent effort to develop an urban forest management plan will hopefully give us guidance about how we perpetuate our urban forests, because right now a lot of trees are coming down all over town. I have expressed concern over and over about the multimodal district, because that doesn't require as much canopy to be left at the end of the day after the development is in place. Okay. So that would be, I think we do need to look at it.
Okay, Desloge, were you?
Was that, you said the canopy is bigger, meaning
Right.
we have frankly not as a city.
Yeah, there was
that
more tree coverage
Which
today than
is
there was 50 years ago.
It's a
take all that
testament to the
back.
people in the community that every time we go down that path, the Canopy Roads Committee is brutal for developers. The people out there, people step up. The ad you ran the other day with the North American Properties off Cascades Park, people, they feel strongly about the trees as a community, so clearly something's working.
If I could just say this very quickly, all you have to do is go out to Southwood, and 15 years ago, there wasn't a single tree on any of those roads. And you go on some of those roads 15 years later, and there's a canopy over the entire road. Many parts of our city 50 years ago didn't have trees. Trees have been planted, they have grown. And that's one of the reasons why it's so much broader than it was.
Everybody still here, still supporting the Cascades project, the CRA project?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And the other 2 as well?
There's one about that. I think it's important for people to understand that property, this can't be done in 30 seconds, but that property.
Well, that's all you got.
I know. That property, that is part of a CRA issue. We have 2 CRAs. That's just like me and Commissioner Richardson. I used a piece of his property to trade to FSU to get that piece of property. So that piece of property, that the downtown CRA owes money to the front, considerable money, and it always had to be sold for development.
Okay. When the sign says end of broadcast, it's time to wrap it up. So look, thank you to Leon County and City Commissioners for this portion of our town hall. This concludes our broadcast of the Tallahassee Town Hall on WFSU Public Media. We will be continuing our discussion with written questions from the audience in an extended version which can be seen live on Facebook and online.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back, and we've got our first audience question. With noticeable large projects focusing on growth, do both the county and do both Leon County and City establishing the future organization reflecting the priority focus for the services to residents? Example, City Police Department, not a priority. In other words, how are projects prioritized between the city and the county, I believe is what they're asking. Who wants to take that?
We're not clear.
So how are
Private sector?
projects, how are public projects that are joint projects prioritized between the city and the county, CRA and otherwise? Commissioner Dozier.
I guess joint things we do together, blueprint.
I think we do a good job, say in Blueprint, in the sales tax extension. We've been working through a year-long process. In June, we're going to have an implementation plan for the Blueprint 2020 projects. This is what everyone voted on in 2014, the extension of the sales tax. So I think we are doing a good job there. We separate different types of projects. They're very holistic. They've got trails and roads and stormwater and different things. On the other side, I do think we could do a better job, and this came up in our transportation discussion the other day, that we have a lot of overlapping plans. We've got City of Tallahassee plans that the planning department works on. We've got county plans. We've got state roads crossing city roads, crossing county roads. And over the years, we have gotten much better at coordinating between transportation, CRA, Blueprint. I think we can keep pushing that further. But I want to read in between the lines and just say one more thing. There are a lot of times when people question, and you mentioned the Cascades North American Properties project recently, the look of that project. There is a really fine balance between allowing the private sector to do what they do and having some government involvement. That was public property. It is going to add housing options. It's going to add more commerce downtown. These are good things. Sales tax money goes right back into all those things I mentioned a moment ago. But we can craft what we kind of want to see on the property, but we're not directing the private sector in what they do build.
Okay.
So the city is going to keep growing. So we need to have a balance there between allowing that growth, but good policy that shape it in the way we all want it.
For the city, how will spending $50 million on a new police headquarters solve our crime problem? Mr. Richardson.
Well, first of all, Skip, I told someone earlier, I want a police chief who has a big vision. The numbers that were reported in the newspaper was the chief's vision of what he wants to see in a public safety campus. Hopefully, it will be located on the south side of town. The current police department is in an old elementary school. There are structural problems with that building. It does not accommodate all of the staff of the police department. We've added 50 additional police officers in the past 2 years that I've been on the commission. We've added additional technology that building can accommodate. They need a new facility. They need to be brought into the 21st century in terms of the facility that they will reside in. And so I like the fact that our chief is thinking big. He wants to see a complex that the community can be involved in, and where he can continue to implement his community policing strategy. That $50 million figure is just that, his big vision. So we will take that when it comes to us as a commission and see, based on public input, community input, what realistically we can do in this community.
Okay, did you want to weigh in?
There's another part to this, and that is from an economic development standpoint. When you're going to put $50 million into an area where you'd like to see future economic growth, as a result of that facility being there and the police operating out of the facility, in addition to all these other ancillary potential entities operating there, you're going to see restaurants, and you're going to see retail, and you're going to see housing, and you're going to see other things come up around that. which is really good. So this is more than just us moving the police station. It's us looking at that police station as an economic driver.
Okay, real quick, Mr. Miller?
Very quickly, well, I'd like to make clear the premise that we all had to start with, and that is the police station has long outgrown it's the building it's in right now. I mean, there has to be a new facility, and that's just all there is to it. So that's the starting point. And then we basically task the officers and the management with telling us and developing their vision for the future and what they thought they needed. So I think that it's going to be the beginning of a very good conversation.
Okay, next question. I'm going to try to get through as many of these as we can, so we'll get a couple answers and then move on. What are some solutions regarding transportation issues for college students? Got some young people here today. Commissioner Ziffer.
You know, I think on a fairly substantial level, with all the development along Gain Street and Madison, and the other housing that we have coming up closer to the universities, we have a lot of our young people that are now moving much closer to their respective campuses, and they don't have as much of a need to get in their cars. Now, from a transportation standpoint, there are probably some new transit routes we need to look at, and there are other elements like that, but when you have 5,000 or 6,000 new beds or more that are immediately next to your schools, and they used to be much further out, there's an opportunity to reduce that traffic load.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Well, just real quickly, Skip, and we've had a very good working relationship between the universities, the college, and Star Metro in providing transportation, transit for college students. We may need to take a look at that, see if there's more that we can do, but we have had that really good relationship over the years.
Next question is, what's the county doing to prepare for the tsunami of older people who will be aging in the city in the coming years?
I resemble that statement, Skip.
We're going from the young to the old here.
Well, now it's Commissioner Lindley, but Commissioner Desloge and I were initially on it. The Department of Elder Affairs, we're the first dementia-friendly county, city in the entire state of Florida. Leon County is aging rapidly. We have a bell that is about like this, but the older 65 plus, actually 50 plus, is about to bulge because people like me are moving into that area or have already moved into it. And we have a lot of people moving here because it's a great community to live in. So we have a significant issue. 1 in 5 people over the age of 65 will have one form or another of dementia or Alzheimer's. 1 in 5. That's a really big number. And then when you consider the family members that need to help and serve as caregivers, then we have all of those. We need to do a better job. We now have our first responders and our police department and our sheriff's department and other departments in our respective governments have been trained on how to be aware of and how to recognize when there is a dementia or Alzheimer's issue. We need to start doing that with our retailers and other folks because it is going to become a huge problem for us.
Okay.
So we've got an initiative called Choose Tallahassee, which a lot of us have been involved in, which talks a little bit about how 55 and older, young retirees, it's a huge positive economic impact for us. And I was on the Senior Center Foundation before I got elected. We've gone through and tried to figure out how do you make Tallahassee more senior friendly? How do you make it, if you know where the senior center is, more walkable? How customer service around town, how do you have it so that it's a little bit more functional for the seniors in our community? But I look at it as a positive. You have people moving to our community to retire young, it's a big economic gain for us locally.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. We are getting we're so happy our young folks are here today, and we're coming back to the school shooting. And so I guess the question I have for y'all is, we talked about this at the top, what are your limitations and your opportunities, let me ask it that way, when it comes to affecting this problem? So obviously a repeal of the Second Amendment is not going to be started with the Leon County Commission. That's not where it happens. But what is it that you can do? Commissioner Dailey.
Okay, I think it's important to repeat because I think some of the students came in a little bit late. One of the problems that we face in local government that Gil Ziffer has been a leader on in our community is home rule authority. And the fact of the matter is that for the first time that I can remember, maybe in the history of the legislature, there was a bill that was passed several years ago, signed by the governor into law, that not only made us repeal all of our local gun laws, but also put civil penalties on local electeds' heads if we did not comply with that. For instance, we could be removed from office, we could be jailed, we could be fined. It's the first time I can ever remember in the history of the state that that had ever been taking place. As a result, we had a lot of great laws on the books pertaining to you cannot carry in a county park, city parks, that we had to repeal. So what
And when you say home rule authority, could you define that for those who might
Home
not
rule
know?
authority is in the Florida Constitution, which is the bedrock of self-governance. You have 412 municipalities across the state of Florida, 67 counties. We should all be able to determine on the local level how we govern our own communities. Right. What's best for us might not be best for South Florida. What's best for South Florida might not be best for the Panhandle. And that's the beauty of home rule, which is in the Constitution of the state of Florida. So until that is repealed at the state level, our hands are tied to a certain extent. However, Commissioner Lindley very eloquently led the charge and brought up again today that the gun show loophole is something that we should definitely give serious consideration and we can take action on.
Okay, yes, Dozier.
Just to build on that, I think these things have already been mentioned before, but better coordination on the data collection and sharing among our law enforcement agencies. I mean, we can help support that in the infrastructure, as was mentioned, and in funding, but they need to be, if we did have background checks, and reading back through that item, it takes extra resources, extra staff to do the checks at gun shows and close that loophole particularly, but also just in general in reinforcing background checks. But we need better coordination and data sharing between all of our law enforcement agencies, local level, but also state and interstate. But one thing I think is really important here, and I don't want to lose sight of it, mental health does not equal violence. And that is critical in this discussion because we keep coming back to that, and it's so important for us to have more resources. And there are a lot of people in the jail that suffer from mental health, but they may be homeless, they may not be violent or something else. So having more resources, particularly in the schools, to help people and identify people and those who are in foster care and other areas who may be struggling, that is a invaluable thing, but this is a different struggle, and we need to focus on it, but we need to not sideline or just point the finger at mental health.
Right, Commissioner Ziffer.
August is a primary. November is the general election. Make us accountable, not only us locally, but also your state representatives, your congressmen, your U.S. senators, your governor, whoever it is. If you don't find that they are answering or responding to what you think needs to happen, you need to vote for the person that does. Because unfortunately, not enough people vote, and we need to do a better job. And I think this particular moment in time reminds me, and I'm an old person here, but I remember back in the 60s when young people ended a war because they brought the U.S. government to get out of Vietnam. That's what happens. When young people get engaged, a lot of things happen. So for all of you young folks, we have failed you in many ways. Step up. You've got the ballot box. Make a difference.
Okay, let's move back to development. Can you share your thoughts about the airport gateway plan and how it will equitably, underlined, improve the quality of life of citizens directly impacted by the proposed improvements more than just the benefit to FSU? So this is a question about your assessment of the airport gateway plan.
Is this a publicly noticed, is the media here? But I'll go first. I'll go on the record. I support it. I look forward to voting in favor of it. I think it's going to be a game changer for Southwest Leon County. I think that the development that is going to be brought down there is much needed to that area of the county. I think the beautification coming in from the airport will be a game changer as well, and it'll be something that we will be very proud of, and I strongly support it.
Ziffer?
So if you look at Lake Bradford Road and you look at Jackson Bluff Road and you go the entire southwest quadrant, try to name me a restaurant or a grocery store or a healthcare facility or a hotel, and yet the single, probably, besides the universities, single greatest economic driver we have is the Mag Lab, in addition to all the other research that's going on at Innovation Park. For us not to consider creating an opportunity for more people to work and live out in that area doesn't make sense to me. We have to do this. Plus it goes to our airport, which, by the way, is our connection, and we need to do a better job, but it is our connection to the outside world.
Richardson?
Thank you, Skip. I want to support the project. I live within walking distance of it. There are some issues that I still have, though, and those have to do with the displacement of residents who live in those areas. When we look at 4-laning Stuckey Street, there's a homeless veteran facility that will be taken out. Nobody has talked about where those people are going to be relocated when that happens. They've talked about 4-laning Spring Hill Road. Same thing. If we 4-lane that thoroughfare, there are people that are going to be displaced who have lived there for years. Their families, their homes are there, and that discussion has not been had yet. And I want to hear that discussion before. I think the infrastructure will be great. It will bring economic development and other growth to the area, but my concern is with those poor folk who haven't come to the public hearings and don't have a lobbyist to speak on their behalf, but they will be severely impacted.
Okay, Commissioner Desloge, then we're going to keep moving.
So when we first looked at this with Blueprint, it was Spring Hill Road. FSU was nowhere in the mix, really. Right. Now FSU stepped up, and frankly, what's good for FSU is what's good for our community. It's not a win-loss proposition. It's all taxpayer money. So the reality is we've got a partnership between FSU and the city and the county, and every project of any significance, Blairstone, Cascades, Gain Street, takes all of us working together. And it's not easy, it's a big lift, but you look at it, it's transformational, and the South Side will really benefit in a huge way. And there are pieces, as Commissioner Richardson pointed out, that we gotta be aware of, but to just stop it is really, in my opinion, a little short-sighted. I'm all in, I think it's a great idea. So.
Okay, next question. It seems like most, if not all, economic development efforts are aimed at attracting the so-called creative class. What about the working class? What is being done to improve the economic situation of low and unskilled people already living in Tallahassee, Leon County? Maddox.
I don't think we can ignore Commissioner Lindley's efforts over the past couple of years with Leon Works. I think that's probably the way we move forward on that issue more than we have in the past probably 20 years. And I think also one of the biggest issues that we have in Leon County right now is affordable housing. Average house around here costs about $200,000. That's low inflated. But we're doing things across our county. If you look at the redevelopment of Orange Avenue apartments and look at the different developments that are going up in Frenchtown, and we're doing things to address the affordable housing issue as well. And so, yes, there are a lot of developments that would help the creative class. But then again, I think if you took a second, just looked around, you will see that there are also a lot of things that we're doing to address the affordable housing problem and skilled worker problem that we have in Leon County, just trying to promote more, trying to get people more involved in those type of careers, and also give them a better opportunity to go out and rent or buy a home that's more affordable.
Lindley, then Dozier.
Well, I just want to give a lot of a salute to the chamber, also the school district, and a lot of the businesses in our community that have really stepped up to help with the skilled labor training programs that we're trying to, apprenticeships and so forth, that we initiated about 3 years ago, but it's really taking off because people do see the number of jobs that are going wanting for lack of people to have the skills to do those jobs. So it's sort of emerged as a community effort, and it's included in the housing part as well.
You're being
But
quite
it's-
modest on
You
this.
are really
This was your idea, and it is a nationally award-winning program across the
See why
United
I'm
States.
leaving. I can't stand
Recognized
it.
by several counties, and you did a tremendous job on it.
Thank you.
And
So,
then we're going to head
yeah.
to the next one.
So, to the Leon Works point, read a study, we're putting 70% of our resources nationally into four-year education, but 70% of the jobs don't need a four-year degree. And I think there's been a shift going back 30 years where we said to be successful, you had to have a four-year degree. And all the numbers really bear that out. But construction are good jobs. Nursing is a great job. And going back to your question about retirees, we saw some numbers this morning in economic forecast that some of the other economists that forecast this, some of the highest job opportunities in our area in the next 10 years maybe all of them, but one were in healthcare. So a lot of these areas, and the construction industry can't find enough people to work in this area. So the conversation has started, but we got to pick up the pace on the training programs and the apprenticeship and bringing businesses in. We're missing some links there.
Real quick, Commissioner
Yeah, sure.
Ziffer.
It's not just Tallahassee and Leon County. Housing and workforce training, those are two of the biggest issues in just about every city in this country.
Right.
And those are things that everybody's having to deal with, and those are things that we have started to really focus on.
Still on housing, there's no conversation of affordable housing in the Cascades project. Does that perpetuate a lack of equality in the city? Commissioner Miller.
Actually, there's a whole body of folks, some of them are sitting right here, these kids that are in college and in high school, that are getting out of college and getting their first jobs, which in my daughter's case, she was paid $21,000 a year. And it's hard to find housing for those people, for young professionals. My understanding is that there will be housing like that in that Cascades project, so that's.
Okay. Next, for commissioners, areas of Woodville need fire hydrants, but the water lines are not large enough to supply them, and they will need a water tower. Are there any plans to upgrade the water lines and/or build a water tower in that area? Commissioner Dailey.
I will, let me jump in on this one, because this might not be the most popular answer. The short answer is yes, we do have a master plan in the unincorporated area in regards to the fire infrastructure. But people need to know that this is a huge difference between municipal government and county government. When people choose to live way out in the county, in a rural area, whether you think it's suburban, it's considered a rural area, there are certain things that are not provided. And it is by the past couple of years that we've been able to concentrate on the fire infrastructure. But, it takes time to do this. It takes money to do this. We have a priority list that we're just knocking out as much as we possibly can. But for the expectation to have a complete fire infrastructure in the rural areas, in all the rural areas, is not going to happen overnight.
Okay, real quick, and then we're going to move on.
Real quick, two things. The infrastructure sales tax, the blueprint sales tax, we put 2% this time based on everyone's vote into infrastructure for the unincorporated area, small infrastructure. It's not the big road projects, it's the culvert, the fire hydrant, others. I saw an updated list on our fire hydrant program just the other day. We're working through it. So we are putting them in. But I want to signal out Oak Fair neighborhood, out Mahan Drive. They needed a tower, and they came in with their HOA and contributed some money, and we were able to match that. So there are other ways that neighborhoods in the unincorporated area are coming up with creative solutions to partner with the county, and that's really exciting too.
But also keep in mind, we don't run water utility.
We don't.
You're
And
either
it's
on
Talcott
water
as well.
or you're on Talcott.
Yeah.
We don't run the water utility.
Okay, real quick, Commissioner Richardson, then I got a city question.
I'm going to have to excuse myself. I've got another commitment that I'm already running late for.
Okay.
But I wanted to be here, but I had double booked myself, and I'm on the program at this other event.
Thanks for telling us.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So the next question is for Commissioner Richardson. No. It is a city question though. Could the city function without the budget transfers from the utilities? And what are the pros and cons of spinning off the utility into a public corporation?
So, most people aren't aware of this, but we actually put Commissioner Richardson in charge of solving this problem.
Commissioner Richardson.
No,
You know,
it's
here
not.
we've got the exact percentage, I think it's 40% of our city geographic area is university, state government, city or county. So we have this huge part of 50% of our geographic area that there's no ad valorem tax that we derive. And so the only way that the city of Tallahassee can provide the services that we have, which are extensive, police, fire, parks and rec, keeping your roads up, operating a mass transit system, all sorts of other things, is through our utility. So the answer to your question is no, we could not operate our city as we have it now unless we had that transfer. That utility is vitally important to the folks of our area for us to continue to operate. Now, having said that, our rates, and I know people love to say, oh, the rates are unbelievably high. Quite frankly, our rates are pretty comparable to most of the other utilities in the state of Florida. And yet, we're able to transfer a lot of those funds out to operate city government.
Okay, Commissioner Miller?
Yes, thank you, Skip. Well, first of all, keep in mind that our forefathers over here on the city side had to figure out a way not to tax, well, that's the wrong word, but not to lay all the burden of paying for city services on the property owners, since so much of the property is not taxable property. And the way they put into place was to do this the way it is done through the utilities. And that said, I want to go, so that's the only way that all of the people who are not paying property taxes in the city, who are getting services in the city, that's how they contribute to that cost. Secondarily, we have a lot of funds, but the one fund I want to talk about right now is the general fund, which pays for police and parks and those types of things. And out of that fund, only 25% of that fund, of that one fund, is paid for by property taxes. And 25%. So that means 75% of that doesn't even cover the cost of the police. So you've got to make up 75% of it, and another 25 or so comes from the utility transfer, and then the rest of it comes from partnerships with federal and state agencies, from revenue sharing with the state, and things like that. So something would have to change. Massive cutbacks on I hate to talk so fast. Massive cutbacks on services would be involved if that wasn't part of it. And as Commissioner Ziffer mentioned, the city's rates are very comparable to Talquin's and most of the rest of the state. So
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Here's a question about from someone who works with the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization and mentors a third grader at a local elementary school. Before the tragic shooting in South Florida, a student brought a gun to their school and no one ever heard about it. And the question is, why did it take a mass school shooting for you to notice anything when similar situations are happening in your own backyard?
Let me be the first to admit that that is not a true statement. Your county commission 5 years ago brought up the gun show loophole, and the chambers were packed with people that were against it, not in favor of it. We had no backing, and what we heard was, we don't want this. Your county commission's been very proactive on the gun issues. We had very strong gun laws on the books in regard to our parks that we had to repeal because the legislature didn't hear from us saying that that's not appropriate and we have to protect home rule. So we have paid attention. We've been proactive. But we got to come together as a community to support these ideas in order to move forward.
Okay, anybody else? All right, this is another question from a college student. As a new student at TCC, I noticed that many students are facing legal hardships, including incarceration in the city. What services do you know of that are available in the city or county that are aimed to assist college students who are experiencing complications with the legal system? Ziffer.
So there's two parts to this. The first is there's legal
aid.
Legal aid. But the other part is the state attorney, Jack Campbell, has finally re-implemented a civil citation program. And what the civil citation program does is it has our law enforcement focusing more on crime that we really need to deal with and not those smaller amounts of crime. For example, if you're busted because you've got a couple of joints on you. Or unfortunately, you might steal food to feed your family, but it's less than $300. You know, these are not things we should put people in jail for. These are things that people should have some type of diversion program. So the civil citation program allows the state attorney to move those folks rather than putting them in jail and wrecking their lives because it goes on the record for the rest of their lives. They go through some type of diversion program or another program that the state attorney decides is appropriate. Much better. That's being implemented by Jack Campbell throughout this district, and I know the district attorney in Gainesville is doing the same. This allows us to have our law enforcement stop arresting people for stupid things and focusing more on the real crime that we've got to deal with in this community.
Okay,
Specifically, two
we got 30
resources.
seconds left.
Florida State, FAMU, and Tallahassee Community College, I do believe, still through their student government associations, have a legal aid foundation specifically for students on campus that need legal help. And there is also the Leon County Legal Aid Foundation as well.
And let me add one more thing to that. We did have a civil citation program that the City of Tallahassee Police Department was engaged in, and Leon County Sheriff's Department, but Florida State PD was not, and I don't remember if FAMU is, but now all of our law enforcement within this region is engaged in the civil citation program.
Look, thanks again to the all of the commissioners that have been here, and especially, you know, they don't have to be here, but they need to be here for all of y'all to come out. This is what our democratic process needs, is more people engaging. You had great questions. We got through as many of them as we could, and we really appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us for this Tallahassee Town Hall, part of the Village Squares Our Town series, and thanks again to WFSU for all that they did. I hope everybody has a safe evening, and thank you again. Good night.